Well, one of the things that we do want to get into here on Hitting Season as we move through these last few weeks of spring training is we're, again, getting a look at some of the other opponents the Phillies are going to be facing this year inside their own division. We're doing a little tour of the National League East. Last week, we talked to Chris Willis from Battery Power about the Atlanta Braves. And, of course, you can see that video on our Hitting Season YouTube channel as well as on last week's podcast. And joining me this week to give us a preview on the other National League East playoff team from a season ago, the Miami Marlins, Kevin Barral. He's a reporter and writer for Fish on First. He's going to give us the skinny on what's been going on with the Marlins this offseason and the vibes of Marlins camp as they're getting ready to get started on what they're hoping is a second straight postseason run. Kevin, thanks for joining me on Hitting Season. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, man. I think the Marlins are a super interesting team because they surprised people a year ago. They were in the mix most of the season, but when there was about 3 weeks left to go in the season and people are talking about who could potentially get in there, I think the Cubs were certainly higher on the list than the Marlins were. But, I mean, at the end of the day, the Marlins outlasted the Giants, they outlasted the Cubs, and they made it in and got to a wild card round against the Phillies. And, look, you know, first time in the playoffs against a battle-tested team like the Phillies. I think things kind of went the way most experts were expecting that it would. But just what was the general feeling after that series was over for Marlins fans after that season, after getting that brief taste of the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, just like you said, I mean, this was expected. They weren't going to go out there and take both games against the Phillies. It was just hard to see. You're facing Wheeler and Nola, and man, did they look good in those two games. And again, it's just more for experience. And you have to think about it. The Marlins made the postseason for the first time in a full season since 2003. I wasn't even born back then, so that tells you how long it's been. So, it was just a lot of feelings of there's hope for more for this team to really build off of that. And man, has it been definitely an interesting offseason in terms of front office personnel. But yeah, there was a lot of, I guess, good vibes, you could say, in terms of just how that season went for the Marlins. And you could look at the underlying numbers. You could say they had the most one-run wins in baseball, worst run differential to ever make the playoffs. But no matter what, they were in there and they pretty much put up a decent fight against the Phillies in that first game for the most part. Second game didn't go their way at all, but still it was a fun series.
Yeah, and in a really short series like that, there's very little margin for there's no room for error. I mean, you really can't get away with anything, and the Phillies definitely took advantage of it. You mentioned the change-ups in the front office this offseason. Right out of the bat, Kim Ng gone as the general manager. From the outside, it certainly looked as though there was a power struggle. She wanted to do more. They didn't want to let her do as much as maybe she wanted to do. But again, that's from the outside looking in. Can you shed a little light into the decision to move on from Kim Ng as the general manager and what they have in place now? What was the rationale behind all that?
Yeah, so right now the current president, the president of baseball operations, Peter Bendix, joins the front office. It's a completely new front office, just a couple assistant GMs that stayed, and from obviously from what I know, but what seemed to be the issue was that Bruce Sherman, the owner of the Miami Marlins, finally realized that it was time to really start developing this farm system, making sure that, he wanted to build that Tampa Bay Rays mold. And he wanted that with bringing in a president of baseball operations to handle that type of stuff, the drafting, the development of prospects. Kim Ng would have continued having full control over the 40-man roster, if you even want to say, but specifically the 26-man roster. She wouldn't have lost that power, but it seemed like Kim really did want to hold on to all the power. She kind of felt like a promotion was deserved to president of baseball operations, where in that case, he would bring in a new general manager. Bruce Sherman put his side of the option. It was a mutual option. He accepted his side. Kim did not, which led to her departure. At the end of the day, it was more of a power struggle. She wanted more power than Bruce Sherman wanted to give her, and Peter Bendix now joins the fold here for the Marlins, taking over everything.
From the outside, it seems as though Kim had a pretty good argument for not, she gets this team that this overachieving team into the playoffs, and then right away in that offseason, she's being told, we're going to put somebody in over you now, and so now she didn't have a team president, it doesn't seem, who was in charge of baseball operations, kind of like the Phillies had with Dave Dombrowski and general manager Sam Fuld. She was the decision maker in terms of player personnel, and it seemed as though they wanted to put somebody above her, which in my eyes, just again from the outside, looks like a step in the wrong direction if your goal is to say to Kim Ng, hey, great job getting us to the playoffs. You're our girl, you're our woman, you're our person to lead us moving forward. And instead it looked like they said, okay, good job. now here's a new boss for you, and he's going to take away some of your responsibilities.
Yeah, it definitely felt like that. And I mean, you could look at Kim's tenure and you could say, the major league side of it was really well. It was really well run. She made nice trades. I mean, you bring in Jake Berger, you got Josh Bell. Those are two phenomenal trades that she pulled off and ended up being one of the biggest reasons why the Marlins ended up making the postseason. You were able to sign Jorge Soler, although that first year of the deal didn't look too good because of especially injuries. That second year was great. I mean, you got 36 home runs, but you also have to look at the other stuff she did. I mean, she brought in Gene Segura, Johnny Cueto, two bad contracts. Both of them no longer the team. They ended up trading Gene Segura, and you guys know him very well. Midway through the year, and Cleveland DFA'd him. You look at the drafting: Jacob Berry, Connor Scott, JJ Bleday, just all moves that didn't really look well. But really, her main draft pieces were, I believe, were Jacob Berry and the one before that, which was Khalil Watson. One of them no longer in the organization. He was traded to get Josh Bell. You brought in there, and then Jacob Berry is still with the organization. We'll see how that turns out for him. But again, they were just not able to develop prospects. That's what it turns out. If you wanted full control of this team, that includes the farm system. Miami went from arguably one of the best farm systems in Major League Baseball to they're at probably top 3, top 5 worst farm systems in baseball right now, and that is not what you want to see, especially for an organization that unfortunately can't spend as much as, for example, the Phillies or even the Mets or just those other teams in the NL East. And Miami has had to do something, and Bruce Sherman kind of accepted, now's the time to bring in someone who knows how to do this. And that's why they brought in someone like Peter Bendix. But again, you're right. I mean, Kim Eng managed this roster very well. She brought in the right pieces at the right time, and what her work was very well. She's great with the media as well. I mean, great person. Wishing her nothing but the best. I'm really surprised she has yet to line back with another team. Maybe she's taking a year off and goes back into it. We know the report that she did not accept the president of baseball operations job for the Red Sox there. So, definitely interesting turnover for her. I don't think she expected that either, to have someone take over for her.
Yeah, given what the Red Sox are doing right now, it's a kind of a similar situation. It seems like there's some limits on spending even in Boston right now, which is really interesting. And talking about the offseason plan for the Marlins, seems to me, and again, you're right, they don't have the kind of money that they can spend on a lot of free agents, and I don't think anybody really ever thought that would be something that they would do. But you do have this young pitching staff that is very, very good, and you have a team that you would want to build off of what you did a year ago. Again, from the outside, it doesn't look as though the Marlins did a whole lot to improve themselves on last year, specifically maybe even taking a small step backwards in terms of talent, with Jorge Soler now playing in San Francisco. There was one real good power bat in that lineup. He's now gone. What additions did the Miami Marlins make this offseason that you think make them better than they were a year ago?
First we have to start with the front office. They brought in a lot of new heads. You bring in Gabe Kapler, you bring in Rachel Balkovic, Vinesh Kantan. I mean, you brought in a lot of heads, but towards the major league team, they acquired Nick Gordon from the Minnesota Twins in exchange for Steven Okert, a really good, versatile defender, could play infield and the outfield very well. He was injured in 2023. But in 2022, if you look at those numbers, he was really damn good for the Minnesota Twins. So there's a lot to like there. It's a big bounce back candidate. Along with that, the only major league free agent they have signed thus far has been Tim Anderson to a 1-year, $5 million deal. He will be the primary shortstop for the Miami Marlins. We saw what happened to him in 2023, but just look back at 2022, over 300, 110 WRC plus. He was a great player. And you even look at his 2021 season with the Field of Dreams game and all those great moments.
Yeah.
Anderson joins this fit for the Marlins, and he makes them a better team right away. You're just hoping for that bounce back. And, at the end of the day, you mentioned the losses, but the Marlins team's still almost exactly the same. And you're going to get a full season of Jake Berger and Josh Bell. You still have the reigning batting champion, Luis Arias. And your pitching staff, as you mentioned, you lose Sandy, but you still have Jesus Luzardo, Yuri Perez. Trevor Rogers is coming back from his injury. Max Meyer as well. Ryan Weathers is throwing almost 100 miles per hour in spring training. And we'll see what happens with Braxton Garrett when he returns from his injury. But a lot of that, you still have Tanner Scott and Andrew Nardi, two of the best relievers in the National League last year. And Tanner Scott, one of the best relievers in baseball last year. So there's a lot to like. They made some minor league additions there as well. Signed Trey Mancini to a minor league deal. He hasn't looked very good through spring training. He's only had one hit, if I recall. And aside from that, you bring in a lot of relievers. Declan Cronin, a former White Sox. He has a lot of swing and miss stuff. Darren McCacken, former minor league starter for the Seattle Mariners. So they made a lot of minor league signings. And we'll see if they make another major league signing or even if they make a trade. I mean, they still have a lot of starting pitching. There's a lot of ways they could go here, but right now they very very small offseason for Peter Bendix, and he mentioned this. It was really about getting to know the organization, getting to know the people in the organization. You talk to Skip, talk to the front office people that were already there. Inazo Campo, assistant GM there, Dan Greenlee, another assistant GM. Just getting to pick their brains and see where this organization is at, and he made his assessments from there.
You mentioned Braxton Garrett just a second ago. I know he's a little bit behind. What's the injury status on their very good young left-handed starting pitcher?
Yeah, so just general soreness entering spring. He was delayed a little bit. He's thrown 3 bullpens, but according to Skip, he's only thrown 2 real bullpens, and he's just not going to be ready for opening day. It may be a couple weeks into the season where we see him be prepared. He's still a long way from live BP, so right now it's just going to be straight bullpens for Brax. But yeah, they're going to need him. He threw a career high in innings last year. And, maybe the start of the season won't see him throw the same amount of innings, but he definitely will throw something close to that. And they're going to need him, especially, you're losing 200 innings, and Sandy Alcantara, the 2022 National League unanimous Cy Young Award winner, he struggled in 2023, but still threw 184 innings. And at moments, he looked like the Sandy we saw in 2022. So they're going to need Brax.
So I think I know where you're going to go with this, but what do you like best about the Marlins heading into 2024? I would imagine it's got to be that starting rotation. And you mentioned Sandy Alcantara there. What are your feelings on him as a bounce back guy this year, and him figuring out whatever it was that was messing him up last year?
Yeah, so Sandy's going to be out for this entirety of 202024.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, that's a dumb question. Yeah, I forgot about
that. You're good.
That's why we talk to you, so that way we can get the intel on that. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. He'll be out. He's making good progress on the rehab, which is good to see. He should throw in a couple months at least, maybe when the season starts, somewhere around there. We'll see. But besides that, you still have a very good rotation. Yuri Perez, I would say he's going to throw more than he did last season. When you look at what he threw combining minors and majors, it was over almost 120 innings. You would have to think it's going to be way more than that. So you're going to get some innings from Yuri. He won't be sent down midway through the season. You'll also have Jesus Luzardo, who has been named the opening day starter. He should hit close to that 180 inning marker around there. The pitching, I love the pitching for this Miami team. Even without Sandy, you still have what seems to be one of the better rotations in the National League. If Edward Cabrera could throw some strikes and handle his control issues or command issues, he's going to be one of the best pitchers in the National League. He could get all-star votes. That's how good I think Edward is. Ryan Weathers, who was acquired for Garrett Cooper and Sean Reynolds in that San Diego trade last season. I think Ryan Weathers has a good chance to be a big-time piece for the Marlins. They're expected to use him in a swingman role. Max Meyer, another piece that probably starts the season in AAA if I had to assume. Big name there. Remember, he was one of the top picks in the 2020 draft. I expect him to have a big year for the Marlins.
He made his big league debut against the Phillies. I remember Max Meyer.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. You guys got him good too in that game against Philadelphia, but there's a lot to like with this Marlins rotation. Once again, you're getting Jazz Chisholm back. Hopefully stays healthy for the majority of the year. That's going to be the huge thing as well. But when he was on the field, he proved to be one of the best center fielders in baseball, just statistically with DRS and even outs above average on Baseball Savant. So he was really good there. And again, you have Josh Bell and Jake Berger. You lost Jorge Soler, but Josh Bell gave, I believe, about over 20 home runs, and Jake Berger surpassed the 30 homer marker. Now, will he get the same? Maybe. Who knows? Maybe not. And if the Marlins end up struggling, you'll see Josh Bell get traded most likely. He's on a 1-year deal at the end of the day. So there's a lot of ways you could go, but what they're doing this season is they're preparing themselves for what they couldn't do last year, which was produce enough starting pitchers with the amount of injuries that they had to continue to stay in the race. They brought in Yoni Chirinos. They brought in Vladimir Gutierrez. They brought in a lot of starting pitchers or former starters that they're going to make relievers. Look at AJ Pug. He was supposed to be a reliever for the Marlins. He was going to be a starter for Oakland until he got traded. And he right now he's probably in the mix for that rotation spot. And from what it looks like, he will most likely make the opening day rotation as that number 3 or number 4 starter for the Marlins.
All right, so right now, where would you rank the Marlins in terms of the NL hierarchy?
You got to put them third. Actually, yeah.
No, National League as a whole, not National League East, National League.
National League. They'll be in the fight, man. I think they'll be in the fight for the wild card, at least through that first half of the season. Who knows what they'll look like then? Maybe they'll just fall out of it. It's hard to see this same exact team with an addition of a Tim Anderson, Nick Gordon, and just still a really good pitching staff fall out and win 60-something games. It's hard to see now. Will their one-run win luck go away? And if you remove those one-run wins, the record looks a little bit different, as well as your run differential. So they're once again going to rely on the pitching. I think they'll be right out of the wild card, if not that third spot again. But I don't think they'll be as bad as, a 2022 Miami Marlins team or even 2021.
Yeah, the Marlins are a team that I don't really think the one-run thing matters a whole lot, because that's how they're built. They're built to win one-run games. They're not going to score a lot of runs, but they're also not going to give up a lot of runs. So they're probably going to play a lot of 4-3 games, 3-2 games. It's just that's pretty much, I think, how the season's going to go for Miami. But you're right. There's very little margin for error if you are playing a lot of close games, a lot of low score games, one-run games, and you might actually be playing better than a year ago and have a worse record simply because you're playing a lot of those kinds of games. But you just don't know which way the cookie's going to crumble when you're playing that many tight, low-scoring games. Last thing for you, and it doesn't have anything to do with the Marlins. I think you had said you feel like the Marlins are going to finish third in the National League East. I kind of agree. The Mets have their problems. The Nationals are certainly not going to contend for a wild card spot. But as you look at the top two teams, you look at the Braves and the Phillies. The Braves, obviously, over these last couple of years, have been built for 162. The Phillies, it appears, have been built to get through 162 and get to the postseason. But really, it's an October team, right? You've got a top-heavy rotation. You've got a lot of power bats in the lineup. And they've had the Braves number these last two seasons in the playoffs. So if you had to pick right now, Phillies or Braves in a 5-game playoff series, who would you choose?
Oof. Man, I mean, good for the Phillies. They re-signed, not re-signed, extended Zach Wheeler. I mean, that pitching is really good. You still have Bryce Harper there. Braves somehow still managed to get better and better. They bring in Chris Sale. They did it once. I think they'll do it again. I'll take the Phillies. I mean, that Braves team is really, really
They are really good.
I mean, they continue to add some way, somehow. And they'll bring up another prospect. Who knows? And they'll do it again. But I think the Phillies, man, they're built for October. I saw, Miami was at Citizens Bank for the playoffs. That place was popping. There's just no other way to say it. It may have been one of the craziest baseball atmospheres I've just seen on TV there. And Philly, when Philadelphia has your back, they cannot lose, and they will not lose. And Atlanta, another good baseball atmosphere, another great fan base, but I think you got to go Phillies. I mean, that top of the rotation is just too good.
Yeah, and the top of the rotation has had the Braves number for years in the regular season too. I mean, that's why people are talking about, like, it's kind of fluky, the layoff and all that. You just look at the numbers. Wheeler Nola Suarez has always pitched very well against the Atlanta Braves. Not a surprise that they shut down the Braves offense, but man, I don't really want to face them a third time in a 5-game series. Let's not press our luck here. Let's see if maybe we can work around Atlanta this time around and let somebody else handle those guys. Well, folks, make sure you're reading everything that Kevin Barral is doing, covering the Miami Marlins for Fish on First. And Kevin, thank you for coming back on Hitting Season. Let's talk a little bit later in the season.
For sure. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to come back soon.